and welcome, beautiful friends. I'm Kendra, and you're listening to the Renewed Minds podcast, the show where people can be heard, known, and cherished for their own mental health story. Welcome back to the Renewed Minds podcast. Today, I have with us Tayla Haswell, who is going to be sharing her testimony with us today, and I'm super excited. So, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor.
You're so welcome. So just a little bit to get to know you, tell us your full name, something that you're currently obsessed with, and your favorite worship song that is speaking to you right now.
Full name, Tayla Amy Haswell. Don't use my middle name against me. Something that I'm obsessed with right now, a chai tea latte. Not even a right now thing, just an always obsessed with a chai tea latte. And then my favorite worship song now, and honestly for probably the last 2 years, is Preference by Rachel Morley.
Cool.
Yeah.
I've never heard it. I'll have to go check it out.
Add it to your playlist. Yeah.
Gonna do that. Cool. Okay, well, we're gonna dive right in. So let's hear about your story. Tell me what it was like to be little Tayla.
Little Tayla, I was blessed to be born into a ministry family. My parents were Christians. They did missionary work all across the world. I'm the youngest of 3 girls. I have 2 older sisters. So I grew up in an environment of people that loved Jesus really well. And we traveled the world to share the gospel and to build churches. A passion in my parents' heart has always been to raise up and equip leaders in the church to go out and do what it is that they're called to do. So I felt very privileged to grow up in that family. I was born in Europe. My parents are originally from South Africa. We ended up in the States for a period of time, back in SA for a period of time, and then immigrated to Canada when I was about 13, going into 7th grade. So on the surface level, we were the quote unquote perfect family, 3 girls, all serving in church, parents serving in church. But underneath the surface, there was a lot that was going on internally for me as the youngest of 3, and feeling a lot of pressures, being a pastor's kid. And that was really like the foundation in my childhood that set up a lot of interesting things that happened in my teenage life.
Okay, well, tell us more about that.
So growing up, we moved a lot. I hold the record in my family for going to the same school for the longest amount of time, living in the same country for the longest period of time. My oldest sister went to high school for 2 weeks total. So it's not a hard record to beat in our family. But for context, I was in Europe for the first 6 months of my life, in the States, living between 3 different states for 5 years of my life, and then in South Africa for grade 1 to grade 5, and then in Canada we moved to Edmonton initially, and then we just moved around a lot basically. So contextually with that, everywhere that you go, you're the new kid. You have to either be the one that sits in the corner because you don't want to be noticed. I was not that. I'm naturally super extroverted. I'm the social butterfly. I wanted to be seen. I wanted to have friends around me. And so everywhere that we went, it was a priority for me to make myself known. And part of that journey was my life and love in dance. And so being a pastor's kid, perfectionism becomes just kind of a natural thing that you feel like people expect you to be a certain way or fill a certain role in the church. And even though that was never something my parents put on me, it's something that you just naturally feel like you have to show up and perform in those environments. And then falling in love with ballet. Ballet is a world where perfectionism is like par for the course. You either are perfect or you're not. And that is perfect in your technique, perfect in your athleticism, your artistry, but also perfect in the way that you look. Your body type has to be a certain way. You have to weigh a certain weight, and you can't be anywhere outside of that mold without historically just feeling like you didn't quite fit or you weren't going to achieve your goals. So between being essentially a pastor's kid or a PK and growing up in an environment where you feel pressure to be perfect, and then falling in love with dance, and my parents just supported me so much in that and really prioritized finding a dance studio for me everywhere that we lived in the world. There was just this like double down effect of like, you have to be perfect. If you don't present in a certain way or fill a certain role, you are not good enough. And so everything about my worth and my identity became tied in my ability to actually live up to other people's expectations in every environment in my life. Yeah. So instead of finding my worth in Jesus as a young girl, my worth started to just become compounded in what do other people think of me. Wow, yeah. And what other people's opinions of me were actually defined like who I was and whether or not I was worthy of success or love or attention or whatever that looks like. So that was, if you look back to the story, like it really was from day one all the way through. Wow. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so then that's kind of like early Tayla, but then also teenage Tayla.
Yeah.
So, okay, so then did that kind of compound into your early young adult years?
Yeah, so I think when things really hit the fan, honestly, is when I was in high school. I had the opportunity to go to an art school for high school. So I did my school courses until lunch, and then I did my dance classes after lunch. Wow. And so flipping the switch completely from being a church kid every Sunday and at every service during the week to my life was dance. Everything was dance. This is where my identity was held and how well I could perform in the studio, how well I could perform on stage. And then I got injured in my grade 12 year very severely. I had nerve damage in my back. I fractured my fifth metatarsal. As a ballet dancer, any ankle or foot injury is kind of the end of the line. And when that started shattering around me, I realized that nobody like loved me for what I thought they were supposed to love me in, right? I wasn't the girl that was dancing with kids 3 years older than her anymore. I wasn't getting the lead roles. And that was where I had tied so much of like, I'm worthy because I'm at the front of the stage, or I'm worthy because I'm getting the lead role, or I'm getting the great marks in my ballet exams, or whatever this looked like. And my whole like safety net completely crumbled because I was rooted in nothing other than that version of success. Mm-hmm. And that flipped completely to now I cared so much about what my high school friends thought of me because I couldn't find, like I was grasping for anything to feel like I was worth something. And that turned into getting involved with kind of the wrong crowd in high school, honestly. I started partying a ton in my grade 12 year. I cared a lot about what boys are great, but stupid teenage boys thought about me became like the measure of whether or not I was worth anything.
For sure.
And so like the whole dance world of what you look like and feeling like I was never good enough just transferred into feeling like I wasn't good enough if a guy didn't see me for like physical beauty or physical worth. And that I had an eating disorder all through high school, and that was all wrapped up in dance, and that just flipped to, was I pretty enough at the party for the boys to like me? And when I graduated from high school, I tried to pursue dance again and kind of rehab my injuries, and that didn't work. And so I started going to university, and I went to a Christian university in Edmonton, Alberta called the King's University. And that first year of school, I lived like 50% in, 50% out of a life for Jesus. Wow. And that 50% out was literally Thursday, Friday, Saturday at the clubs, partying, dancing, and desperately wanting guys to see me and for them to give me attention because I looked the part. And so nothing about my internal world actually mattered to me. Nothing about my relationship with Jesus mattered. It was just about, how many phone numbers did I get, or how many guys asked me out at the bar, or how many free drinks did I get, because that was a measure of like, well, you're pretty and people notice you. And I wanted to be noticed. I wanted to be seen. And that honestly, like I hit rock bottom when I was 21. My 21st birthday was like the blow up moment for me, where I felt seen by Jesus for the first time. Wow. And I know I'm just blabbing, but I'll just keep going on the story. Please. But essentially my 21st birthday, it was my second year of university. I was working as an ice girl for the Edmonton Oilers that year of school, which again, just throwing myself in an environment where my physical appearance mattered way more than anything else about my life. Um, and that felt like safe and normal to me because that's all that I had ever kind of developed and built around myself. But 21st birthday, the girls on the team were all like super lovely people and they wanted to celebrate me really well. And we planned to go out for my 21st birthday, go clubbing and have some drinks and have fun with the girls. And we went out and that was truly the most like horrific night of my life. There was a lot in that night that happened that I was so blackout drunk and I got drugged that night and it was a very, very scary experience. And I remember waking up the next day and my parents had planned a beautiful family like get together celebration for me. And it was, 21 in South African culture is the year that you become an adult and you get the key to the house hypothetically. And it's like being a 19-year-old here.
Sure.
Like that's your like coming of age party is when you turn 21 and you become a lady, you become a woman. And this is it's a huge deal for us in our culture. And so my parents planned this beautiful party for me and we showed up and we all were dressed up and it was so elegant and it was at a French creperie and it was beautiful. And I remember sitting there and just feeling this weight of guilt and shame just settle on me, looking at my beautiful family that loved me so much, that cared about me despite the fact that I was literally off the walls wild and completely not following Jesus and not living the way that they had literally demonstrated for me my whole life. And I just felt this pit of like, you are not worth anything. Like, you are such an awful person. And these people that love you so much, like, you can't even look them in the eyes right now because you're so ashamed of what you've done, what has happened, the choices that you've made. And
you heard that voice.
That's what I felt. Yeah. It was like instinctually like settled on me physically.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember getting home that night and I had this little pink Bible that my parents had bought me for my 15th birthday. I don't think I had really opened it legitimately in any way, shape, or form in those 6 years. And I remember getting home, I sat on my bed and I just opened my little pink Bible and I didn't read a thing, but I just sat there and sobbed my face off. And the weight of that guilt and shame just felt like it was actually going to crush me.
Wow.
And I heard the voice of the Lord in his kindness just speak to me in that moment and say, like, Tayla, I have made you for so much more than this. Wow. And I wrote it on a sticky note, which I recommend. Write everything good on a sticky note and keep it where you can see it. But I wrote that down and I kept that on a sticky note and it's like that was the like switch moment for me where I started to understand that the Lord sees me for who I am, despite all of the junk, all of the choices I had made, the way that I had been living, the affirmation that I was like desperately seeking in all the wrong places. I felt like he actually saw me and loved me and wanted me for me, which is a feeling that I hadn't allowed anybody into that space. And I had just looked for that in so many other places. So that was just a turning point in my life from wildly chaotic teenage years and young adult years to this moment with my little pink Bible. Yeah.
That's beautiful. So then tracing your mental health story through your young adult years, what would that look like?
I wish that I could tell you that moment was literally like the flip and everything just kind of straightened out after that and we were all good. This massive moment with the Lord, amazing encounter with him. And I think for a lot of people, they do have this moment with Jesus and the switch is just flipped and everything is good and dealt with and they don't ever face the same thing again. And I 150% believe that the Lord does work like that. He can work like that. He wants to work like that. And if he doesn't, there's a reason for it. And my experience was that was a moment and an encounter with him that was amazing and beautiful and it did change my life. But but it's not that I never dealt with perfectionism again, or shame,
Mm-hmm.
or feeling guilty and just ashamed of who I was, and never struggled with self-worth. And I think I'm 28 now. It's been 7 years since that moment with the Lord. And there's still stuff sometimes that comes up that I have to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the key is that over the last 7 years, the way that I deal with that has changed. 21-year-old Tayla would have just put on a cute outfit and gone to the bar. And after the fact, I got involved in different things like student leadership and campus ministry at university, and really tried to put myself in environments with people that just like cared about me and cared about Jesus and lived their life in a way that friends of mine from the past just weren't living their life that way. And that became a huge marker for me. But again, I walked through tough seasons. I can tell you all about my relationship history that happened as a young woman, because that was a huge marker for me. And I think where actual change solidified in my life was actually when I moved to Kelowna, which was 4 years ago. So at 24 years old, I moved to Kelowna, and that is where I found my identity in Jesus and actually started navigating, what does that look like? Who is Jesus? What are the characteristics of Jesus that I actually possess and can emulate? And like, who am I as his image bearer? Because pre that, 21 to 24, I was still a wreck. I was trying. I was trying really hard.
Yeah.
But as that perfectionist girl my whole life, I was just striving for perfection in a completely opposite side of the spectrum, right? It wasn't about, did I look perfect anymore? Was my body a size 2? Was I pleasing everybody? And it flipped to, now I have to be the perfect student, and now I'm in leadership on campus, so now I'm this role model and I have to be the role model. And I looked at leadership in such a gnarly, messed up way, where I had to be the perfect strong girl on campus, and I had to be the one that people could look at and emulate. And that completely flipped after my relationship with my ex, because I realized that you don't actually change lives like through that. Jesus working through your vulnerability and your honesty is actually going to be more integral and impactful for the people around you, and give them a pathway to follow that will lead them to Jesus, because he is the only one that's perfect. It's not about us being perfect.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, yeah. So then, do you want to give us a little bit of the details on how that changed for you specifically when you came to Kelowna?
Yeah. I think the marking point for me in moving to Kelowna, I learned how the enemy works. So when I graduated from school in 2019, I was 22, and I started dating this guy who, on the surface, really great guy, is a very great guy. But our relationship was really toxic, and his speech was a lot about how I would be like the perfect trophy wife, and he wanted me on his arm. And it felt like all the work to dig myself out of this hole, unintentionally so, was compounded in this relationship. And I didn't clue into it until after the fact. We broke up, and about a year later, he reached out and wanted to get back together. And in that moment, I just realized, if I chose to get back together with him, I would completely be falling into the same pattern of behavior, the same pattern of thought that I had been for basically my whole life, because that just compounded on each other. And then when I moved to Kelowna, there was a guy who showed attention in my direction, and he was essentially the carbon copy of my ex. He liked me for all the same reasons. His speech was very similar. His lifestyle is very similar. And there was a moment where I looked at that and said, why is this like a pattern in my life? This is a pattern that keeps compounding. And for me, it was in the realm of attention from guys and partying. That was my downfall. That was the thread that the enemy could pull in my life in that season still, to derail me off the track of what the Lord had for me. And that was such a mental struggle because I stopped trusting myself. And so I moved from I have to be perfect and everything has to be perfect about my life in appearance, in the fake version that I show people, to I have zero trust in myself because every choice I've ever made in my brain was wrong. And now there's just patterns compounding on patterns,
Right.
compounding on patterns that you can trace throughout the story of what I've walked through. And it started to become this like mental cycle for me of you're not good enough. People will only want you or love you because of this thing or these things or this, checklist that you have in your head of what you have to look like and what you have to be like. And I had a conversation with an incredible mentor in my life. And she shared with me, the enemy is the greatest note taker. And if he can take notes on your life and just know what button to push, you'll derail yourself. He doesn't even have to do the work to get you there. You will just fall back into the pattern of thinking and the pattern of behavior in those like neural pathways you've already carved, right? It's science and it's biblical.
Yeah.
Right? It's two and two like working hand in hand.
Yeah.
And when I moved to Kelowna and things kind of started up with this guy and I had chosen to surround myself with a faith family, with mentors in my life, because I literally moved here and knew nobody. And so I got to curate this community around me like by choice. And that actually was the marking point for me where things started to switch in my like brain and the way that I thought about myself and the way that I thought about the world, because I put a stop to that in its tracks before that relationship could go anywhere, before that pattern of behavior could actually take root in my life here. This became a space for me and a city for me where I got to say no to that. Wow. And saying no to that changed the way that I walked forward from that point onward, because there was an authority that I gained in that moment where I stopped in my tracks and I said no to that. And I said yes to Jesus. I said yes to the identity that he had for me. And the authority that I gained in that moment wasn't new, right? Like it was authority that the Lord has always given me, that he gives to all of us. But I stood on that for the first time and recognized that for the first time. And that was 4 years ago.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So good. That's awesome. And then since then, how has that looked up until now? Just like walking that out with Jesus.
Yeah. I think it's a constant going back to the drawing board with him. And I think I said earlier that, the way that I like walk this through has changed, because it's not like feeling those stressors of wanting to be perfect just disappear, or people pleasing just disappear. And actually that has compounded and looked a lot more like feeling overwhelmed and feeling anxious for the first time in my life ever at 27, 28 years old. And I've never struggled with anxiety before. And I remember texting you one night and saying, I don't know if this is a panic attack or an anxiety attack. I don't know what's happening, but I'm overwhelmed. I can't control my body. I can't control my thoughts. I feel like a wreck. And in those moments, it's like this fresh way of having to deal with that and looking at this and saying, okay, this is new. This is fresh. I've never walked through this. My brain feels like it's not my own. What do I do in these moments? And the shift from choosing to go out or choosing to avoid or choosing to just sit in that puddle for 3 days and not pull myself out of it, and actually saying, okay, Lord, what do I do now? Okay, Jesus, like, how do I get out of this? How do I give this to you? How do I work with you in this? Like, how do we partner together? And that has actually created a pattern in my life in the last 3 years of just constantly turning to the Lord in all things. Like in the middle of my workday in a conversation, literally mid-conversation. Okay, Jesus, like, what do I say now? How do I deal with this? What do I do? So and good. That pattern of behavior has like restructured and regenerated neural pathways in my brain. Come on. To take those things to the Lord in small and in big. So good. And then it's not the scary thing when I'm experiencing like this massive moment of overwhelm and
Sure,
feeling
yeah.
super anxious, that's just a natural like
Mhm.
habit of
Yeah.
like, okay,
Awesome.
Jesus, what do I do now? Okay, Lord, where are you in this? How do I give this to you?
Mhm.
What's happening in me right now? And how do I invite you into that?
Yeah.
Because it's become a thing that happens in everyday life
Mhm.
and then becomes a thing that happens in those big moments.
Yeah.
Right?
That's so you renewed your mind.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So good.
I didn't. Jesus did, but
Yeah. You still had to do the hard work
Yeah.
though of being like, okay, I'm not gonna be in the puddle,
Yeah.
but I'm gonna
Yeah.
actually go to you
Yeah.
and see what you have to say about it. So good.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. Last question that I always ask everyone is if you had someone come to you that was struggling with mental health, what would you say to them?
Um, I think like one, you're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to be in this forever. There is solution, there is light at the end of the tunnel. It does get better. But I think there's two like main things that I really would love to share. And one is I had a conversation with a friend recently, and she was sharing a little bit about her journey dealing with anxiety and the switch that happened for her when she looked at scripture.
Mm-hmm.
And she looked at that classic scripture in Philippians that says, like, be anxious for nothing, but through prayer and petition, cast all your cares on the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And she interpreted that as, I can never feel anxious because if I'm anxious, Jesus isn't there. And the flip that happened for her was in a moment of anxiety. She cried out to the Lord and she felt his peace and his presence like she never had before.
Mm-hmm.
And so understanding that in your deepest moments of anxiety or stress or overwhelm or depression, Jesus is not absent in those. He's right there. And it's as easy as just turning to him and saying, Jesus, where are you right now?
So
and he will be right there.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, without a question, 150% of the time. So that's one.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a song that I love that just came out by also Rachel Morley, who I love. But she came out with this song recently, and there's the album that she's releasing is about grief and how to deal with grief with the Lord, and that it's actually holy to grieve, and that we are allowed to feel that, and Jesus felt that, and he wants to be in that journey with us. And one of the lines of her songs says, it's holy to come out of the wilderness clinging to my beloved. And that line just gets me every time, because it is that concept of, in that valley, in like the deepest moments of your despair, it's holy to cling to him. It's holy to cry out to Jesus as your beloved, to say, Lord, I need you in this moment, and he will be there with you. He doesn't expect you to reach the mountaintop to cry out to him. He doesn't want that either. He wants to be in that with you and walk you through that. He wants to hold your hand and carry you through it. So those would be my two things. Jesus is there in the darkest hour. He's as easy as a cry out to him, to say, Jesus, I need you in this moment. And he will be there and show up for you in those tangible ways that you need him to. And that is holy.
Thank you. Thanks for that little preach. So good. I love the things that you have to say. Yeah. So thank you for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I'm so glad you came on.
Mm-hmm.
I did this wrong. Thank you for tuning into the Renew Minds podcast. If you're struggling with mental health, please reach out. It is my deepest desire that everyone knows that there is hope when you're struggling with mental health, that you don't have to struggle it alone. So please, reach out. You can find me on Instagram or on Facebook or even on YouTube. Just leave a comment. And so, I want you to remember that you are not alone and you are loved.